Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. First, the headlines. Indian court tells Muslim girls no hijabs now. Armed Palestinians call for mobilizing fighters after Israel kills 3 civilians. One of Malcolm X's Michigan homes goes on National Register of Historic Places. Right-wing Canadian truckers are inspiring their counterparts in the U.S. to march to Washington, D.C. First, U.S. military convoy enters Romania, Poland, as tensions rise between Russia and NATO. Museum of Fine Arts in Houston will expand its Islamic art galleries. And our top story tonight. A court in a southern Indian state told Muslim students on Thursday not to wear hijab until it delivers a verdict on their petition. The students had requested the court overturn a ban on hijabs or headscarves worn by Muslim women. The Supreme Court of India on Friday declined to hear the case. Hijab protests have spread across India as girls refuse to be told what not to wear.
We are receiving so many threats and I can see people following us, but I'm not scared of them. I'm really not scared of them. You know, I'm asking for my justice and I hope I'll get justice. I'm waiting for my victory.
Following the defiance of Muskan Khan, Allahu Akbar has become the rallying cry for the hijab rights movement. A number of demonstrators were detained and beaten by police in the capital, New Delhi, and Calcutta on Thursday. Students and activists also marched in Hyderabad, Calcutta, and other cities. In response to the killings of 3 civilians by the Israeli military, Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, an affiliate with Fatah, called for a general mobilization of its fighters. It also called for the cancellation of the Oslo peace agreement. Eyewitnesses told Anadolu Agency an Israeli Special Forces member hidden in a civilian vehicle stormed the Nablus al-Makhfiya neighborhood. The suspect opened fire at a Palestinian car. The Palestinian Authority condemned the raid as a summary execution. Witnesses said one of the vehicles carrying the Israeli was a yellow taxi. Civil rights leader Al-Hajj Malik al-Shahbaz, also known as Malcolm X, called many Michigan communities home: Lansing, Mason, and Flint. The home he lived in just outside of Detroit in Inkster recently received historical recognition. The house at 4336 William Street, where he lived from 1952 to 1953, is now on the National Register of Historic Places. Al-Hajj Malik al-Shahbaz was a significant leader during the civil rights movement of 1960s. He was the spokesman for the Nation of Islam before embracing mainstream Islam and adopting the name Al-Hajj Malik al-Shahbaz. He was assassinated on February 21st, 1961 at the Audubon Ballroom in New York. Durham County Commissioner Nida Alam said she is helping keeping her friend's legacy alive with her run for Congress. 7 years ago, 3 Muslim college students were executed in their Chapel Hill home by a neighbor. Yusr Abu Salha, 21, her husband Dia Barakat, 23, and her sister Razan Abu Salha were shot dead. The killings were initially attributed to a parking dispute with a neighbor. It sparked national outrage and cries of a hate crime amid rising anti-Muslim sentiment. Alam, 28, who was best friends with the couple, said that the community still feels their loss. In March of 2020, Alam became the first Muslim American woman to be elected to office in North Carolina. She's running in the 6th Congressional District. Police say a Muslim father was gunned down outside his home across the street from a mosque in Brooklyn Wednesday. NYPD officers responded to a call in the 200 block of 4 Bell Street for a shooting around 1 a.m. Police found a man lying next to his car with a gunshot wound to his head. They identified 36-year-old father Mudassir Khan Kadar, who was pronounced dead at the hospital. In a surveillance video obtained by News 12, someone is seen on the sidewalk moments before the shooting. The person runs down the street and moments later was seen running back. Witnesses say that is when Khan Dakar was shot. Khan Dakar was a father to a 4-year-old boy. He was an active member of the mosque across the street from his home. The Florida Supreme Court on Thursday denied Governor Ron DeSantis' inquiry about redistricting a 200-mile congressional district linking Black neighborhoods. The state is in the midst of a redistricting process. The Republican governor wants to dismantle the North Florida seat held by Representative Al Lawson, a Black Democrat. The goal is to make the redistricting map more friendly to Republicans. DeSantis asked the High Court for an advisory opinion whether the district was protected under Florida's voter-approved standards. The court unanimously rejected DeSantis' request, which was backed by the GOP-controlled Florida legislator. Representative Kelly Skidmore, a Boca Raton Democrat working on the congressional map, said Democrats were pleased the courts upheld the separation of powers. A Confederate monument that will be the centerpiece of James H. Berry Park in Bentonville, Arkansas, has drawn criticism from a Muslim civil rights group. The city's planning commission on February 1st unanimously approved the park's development. The Council on American Islamic Relations, the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization, called such monuments symbols of racist hate. Its leaders urged Bentonville and other cities to drop plans to erect Confederate flags, statues, and its symbols in public spaces. Berry was a Civil War officer, lawyer, Arkansas legislator, Speaker of the State House, and circuit judge for the 4th Judicial District. He was Arkansas's 14th governor and served as a U.S. Senator from 1885 to 1907, according to the Encyclopedia of Arkansas. We'll be bringing more news stories after the break. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Mr. Speaker, if I decide to wear a turban, or you decide to wear a cross, or he decides to wear a kippah or a skull cap, or she decides to wear a hijab or a burqa, does that mean that it is open season for right honourable members of this House to make derogatory and divisive remarks about our appearance? For those of us who from a young age have had to endure and face up to being called names such as Towelhead or Taliban, or coming from Bongo land, we can appreciate full well the hurt and pain felt by already vulnerable Muslim women when they are described as looking like bank robbers and letterboxes. So rather than hide behind sham and whitewash investigations, when will the Prime Minister finally apologise for his derogatory and racist remarks, racist remarks, Mr. Speaker, which have led to a spike in hate crime? And given the increasing prevalence of such incidents within his party, when will the Prime Minister finally order an inquiry into Islamophobia within the Conservative Party, something which he and his Chancellor promised on national television?
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Our fellow Americans.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans.
And soon, they will be available to everyone.
The science is clear. These vaccines will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
They could save your life.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
That's the first step to ending the pandemic and moving our country forward. It's up to you.
The first convoy carrying U.S. military equipment and vehicles arrived at a military base in Romania on Wednesday. The convoy is part of U.S. efforts to bolster NATO's eastern flank amid tensions between Russia and Ukraine. U.S. President Joe Biden pledged last week to send 1,000 soldiers to Romania and 2,000 to Poland. The Pentagon said that the Stryker squadron to be relocated to Romania is coming from Velzek, Germany. U.S. troops also arrived in Poland after deploying from Fort Bragg, North Carolina. They will help bolster forces in Europe's eastern flank amid fears of a Russian invasion of Ukraine. A group of American truckers is planning a protest of COVID-19 vaccine mandates this weekend in Los Angeles, as well as a march to Washington, D.C. The Department of Homeland Security is warning U.S. law enforcement agencies to be vigilant. The protest could start as soon as this weekend in Los Angeles, the site of the Super Bowl this Sunday. Ahead of the event, DHS is adding staff to its incident command post in Los Angeles near SoFi Stadium. U.S. truckers plan to drive from California to Washington, D.C., according to the New York Times. The Times also determined these truckers are inspired by extreme right-wing ideologies. Canadian truckers have been blocking 3 U.S.-Canada border crossings, exacerbating supply chain problems. The U.S. has asked to meet with energy companies operating in Algeria to see if more gas can be sourced from there, Reuters reports. Washington is intensifying efforts to find alternative gas supplies for Europe in case there is a disruption from the standoff between Russia and Ukraine. The European Union depends on Russia for more than a third of its gas. Any interruption of flows would worsen an energy crisis that has already led to skyrocketing consumer bills. The U.S. has requested a meeting with Hena, one of Algeria's biggest producers, and France's Total Energies, Reuters reported. Unknown vandals painted a swastika on Wednesday at the doors of a mosque in Germany, according to a Muslim group. Turgut Ulkar from Turkish Islamic Union for Religious Affairs said similar attacks on mosques in Dortmund were carried out last month. These have increased recently and are worrisome to the Muslim community. Ulkar demanded authorities take urgent action and protect places of worship. Police examined the mosque and covered the swastika with spray paint. London Mayor Sadiq Khan announced the resignation of Metropolitan Police Commissioner Dame Cressida Dick. Khan thanked Dick for her 40 years of public service, but he also made it clear that he believed she wasn't up to the task of rebuilding Londoners' trust in the police force. The force has been plagued by scandals including racism, sexism, and a serving officer murdering a young woman. Dick became the first woman to head London's Metropolitan Police in 2017. She said she had no choice but to step aside after Khan declared her no longer confident in her leadership.
Last week, I made clear to the Metropolitan Police Commissioner the scale of the change I believe is urgently required to rebuild the trust and confidence of Londoners in the Met and to root out the racism, sexism, homophobia, bullying, discrimination and misogyny that still exists. I am not satisfied with the Commissioner's response.
The Houston Museum of Fine Arts is launching a $3.5 million project to expand its Islamic art galleries that are part of its permanent collection. The project is slated to be unveiled next year. It will double the size of the Islamic art galleries to around 6,000 square feet, reconfiguring a space that now houses the museum's library. The project includes construction of an adjoining courtyard that will reflect architectural elements of traditional Islamic gardens. Currently, the museum's Islamic art collection includes more than 14,000 pieces and long-term loans from prominent collections, including that of Kuwaiti collector Hossein Afshar. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment. So stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
I am what hunger looks like in America. I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch.
Till September.
I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs, and that's still not enough to put food on the table. I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. To discuss the hijab ban and other markers in India and its similarities with the Rohingya genocide, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid and MOBILIZING ZARNI. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Hena. Deadly Alliances Against Muslims, that was the title of a New York Times editorial. And it got my attention. What is happening and where is it happening? But that was not yesterday or day before yesterday. It came on October 15, 2014. And it was connecting the dots between the Hindu extremists in India of RSS and BJP coalitions with the Buddhist genociders in Burma and in Sri Lanka. And I was shocked to see, because there was not much news about it, but it landed on the editorial, Deadly Alliances Against Muslims. Today we have someone who is a Burmese himself, who is the first one, to my knowledge, who used the G word, genocide, in reference to Rohingya people in Burma, what they are facing. Dr. ZARNI, welcome to Muslim Network TV, brother.
Thank you, Imam Malik. Thank you. Just to correct, I'm not the only or the very first one. There are others who have called it genocide, but I and my wife and colleague, we co-author a 3-year study for the first time, framing the Burmese Islamophobia mobilized by the state of Burma, then controlled by military, using the genocide framework sociologically and the Genocide Convention. And so, just so other people who have alerted to the world, do not feel slighted. I just wanted to make that correction.
Well,
I don't deserve undue credit.
Thank you so much. I was referring to that scholarship. I don't think any scholarly paper appeared before that. And yeah, I mean, Amnesty International didn't allow me to speak, I think, several years ago because I was using the same word. So, MONG ZARNI is a research fellow, Genocide Documentation Center, Cambodia, and advisor to Genocide Watch. I started off by talking about the New York Times in 2014, referring to that. I don't know how prophetic they were or devilish or whatever you want to term it. But now when you see that first the citizenship was questioned of Indian Muslims, when they protested, they were attacked and killed. And now the attack on Muslim women, their scarf and their education. Remember, the education was blocked of the Rohingya people. So you being a scholar of genocide and writing very early on this topic, what are you seeing happening in India today?
Well, I'm seeing the parallel, like very chilling parallel with Burma or Myanmar. We are all like part of South Asia. We are all Indianized, states and cultures and civilizations, whether we are Buddhists or Muslims or, whatever religion, Hindus. We are all Indianized, and we owe a great deal to multi-civilizational subcontinent. But the sad thing and also very chilling thing is the fact that India under BJP, the ruling, Hindu nationalist party, is moving in this genocidal direction. I don't use that word. It's not hyperbole. And also, India has almost 250 million Muslims. Perhaps after Indonesia, this is the largest concentration of people of Islamic faith in the world, and so people don't believe or are reluctant to use the word genocide, because when you use genocide, people think of gas chambers and millions of people slaughtered by the Nazis, or Rwandans, like, what happened in 1994, 800,000 slaughtered within 4 months. And so we are looking at these staggering numbers, and how could the Indian state, slaughter 200 million Muslim? That's not possible. And therefore, because the scale will not reach the Nazi genocide or Rwandan genocide, people are taking it less seriously than the issue warrants. And firstly, genocide is not simply about 1 million people slaughter or gassed to death. Genocide is simply acts and policies and social practices that are designed to persecute, exclude, disenfranchise, disempower, and finally, eventually, exterminate a ethnic, racial, religious, or national community. National minorities are generally the most vulnerable, and obviously Indian Muslims are a national minority. And you talk about citizenship stripping. We've got a similar thing. This citizenship stripping of fellow people within a national boundary who lived there for centuries, generations, decades, goes back all the way to Nuremberg, 1930s, that at the Nazi Party conference in Nuremberg, Joseph Goebbels announced that the German Jews of Eastern European tradition or background are no longer German. So they were called like Nuremberg laws. And so citizenship was tied to either blood or religion. Right? In the case of Burma, we have that 1982 citizenship law that, instantly, with the stroke of a dictatorial pen under General Ne Win, several million Rohingyas were stripped of citizenship, although the northern Rakhine or western Burma had ancestral land. So you've got a number of parallels going. One is the state instrumentalizing the law, not to protect the minorities, but to persecute them, right? And then you've got another ideological element that we have not touched on here. That is, in the very Orwellian fashion, often killers and perpetrators of genocide, or those who design genocide, they see themselves as victims. Yeah, we've got you talk about the Sri Lankan, Burmese, and Indian Hindu Buddhist cross-border triangular alliance. I would call this is the axis or the triangle of evil, the genocidal minds, and in their minds. Like just 2 days ago, some of the one of the most famous Indian documentary maker and a novelist with over 500,000 followings on his Twitter account, tweeting that we need to defend ourselves because the Muslims are, expressing themselves like wearing hijab. That's considered assault on the Indian nation, in which in their eyes is only for Hindus. So there's a Nazi parallel. The Aryan ideology that the Hitler and Goebbels promoted and institutionalized wanted to cleanse the Aryan or Germany of not people with contaminated blood or views. So that is what's happening. That is why I see the parallel.
Yeah, you got a parallel between Nazis and what Burmese did and what is happening in India. That's a first time I'm hearing, unless you have written or other people have been talking. But in the same time, I was looking at the Haaretz Israeli paper. It has an article, Hitler's Hindus. So do you think there is a Nazification of India taking place?
No, what is happening is not Nazification. Because the Hindutva and the RSS ideologies, I mean, like Hindutva, it's basically ethno-religious nationalism dressed up as this holy faith of Hinduism. Hinduism is a polytheist, multiple gods. It allows for so many different variations and identities in practice and whatnot. And so it is not Hinduism per se or people of Hindu faith that are problematic. What is problematic is instrumentalization of the popular belief in Hinduism along the fascist line. But that is not new. When you say Nazification, it sounds as though this is happening only now before our eyes today. No, the RSS ideology, the Hindutva ideology, and all the ideological godfathers or forefathers of this Hindutva ideology, that has at least 100 years in the making. Some of them were Indians educated in very prestigious universities in England, like Cambridge, or like some of the boarding schools here, or study European philosophy and whatnot. This Hindutva ideology actually has so many elements that we found in Nazism. The purity of a nation, purity of a race. So that's why, like, it's not Nazification. It is rooted in Indian version of fascism. And
so,
you know
so
that
it will be, you would say, the caste system, the Varna system. Varna literally means color. That you think is part of that?
I don't really know much about caste system, so I would not comment on the caste issue. But what I do know is that when you have this kind of like purist notion of who is Indian, right? And only Hindus are Indians, and maybe Buddhist and other Jainist, co-religions, maybe little brothers, and the rest, yeah, like Christians and Muslims, yeah, whose faith are rooted in foreign soils like the Middle East, the Abrahamic religions, right? So you don't belong there, through the eyes of the Hindutva purists, because these are alien, creeds that have crept through the Indian, the body of India through colonialism, commercialism. Therefore, the Hindutva ideology demands that those with, those who profess to believe in these quote unquote foreign religions don't belong there. Therefore, they have to be, expelled en masse. And so that's why, like, this National Citizenship Act, right? Where the 2 million Muslims, or like roughly 2 million or up to 3 million Muslims in the state of Assam, have been stripped off or struck off the national registry. So that's why I say, like, we have this, frightening parallel between what happened in the late 1930s in Nazi Germany and what happened from 1980s onward in the slow genocide of Rohingya in Buddhist Burma. Yeah. So we need to take this as a genocidal process unfolding. Genocide just does not happen overnight. It requires courts, it requires politicians, it requires religious leaders acting as racist demagogues, it requires the ruling party, it required the executive branch working together and mobilizing popular sentiment, inflaming it, poisoning the Indian mind. That is the process that I see unfolding in India.
Let me ask you this question, Zani, that while this is happening in India and people like yourself are concerned and aware, are trying to do something, how it is being portrayed in the corporate media, what we call the mainstream media. Before that, there's some explanation may be needed here. You mentioned 2-3 million people lost citizenship in Assam. Actually, it was aimed at Muslim, but when people lost their citizenship, a large number, close to 2 million, they saw that a majority of them were poor Hindus who were just like poor Muslims, didn't have enough documentation of their forefathers' birth certificate and all that. So then they introduced a law, okay, those Hindus can apply for citizenship, but those Muslims cannot apply the citizenship. So they keep playing with the similar game. So do you think the world is realizing, people were warning about Burma, not much was done. People are now warning about India, which is a much larger country. Do you think there are people who are seriously paying attention to this issue?
Well, I think that people who should know better, like, the community of Holocaust scholars and also different Holocaust museums around the world. The U.S. politicians, who have called the China's treatment of Uyghur genocide, which I agree, have been rather silent. The Washington should be flooded with letters and emails and phone calls to say that, look, this is a early genocide signs. And I think last week we had this what we call global civil society scream, trying to sound the warning against the genocidal process that is unfolding in India. Professor Noam Chomsky, 93 years old, took time to to record his message, saying that Islamophobia is a new cancer, new pathology that is fast developing throughout the West. So the West, meaning including the media industry, the culture industry, and so the Chomsky is saying this Islamophobia is enveloping in the West and reaching its dangerous heights in Modi's India. Modi, according to him, is dismantling multiculturalist, secular Indian democracy and replacing it with the neo-totalitarian Hindutva state. And so, the American media has not paid much attention. I was happy to see the very recent New York Times article calling attention to this issue. And also, I think one reason is geopolitics. The India is part of the four nation military strategic alliance that Biden just put together, Quad, Australia, Japan, the USA, and India, to confront essentially, the super aggressive China over there. So when you have a major ally such as India that is proceeding with this genocidal plan, by all indications, Biden may feel constrained not to talk about the genocidal trajectory that Modi is taking India along, because the Biden's overriding concern is China. And so there maybe the U.S. foreign policy always sacrifice the downtrodden and the oppressed Muslims or whoever, Christians or other in other places in Latin America, and so I think this is a major mistake. If you look at Biden's response, or Democrat or Republicans' response, doesn't matter which party, foreign policy, there's very little difference between the Democrats and Republicans. Biden's pursuing Trump's foreign policy with regards to China's rise, and so while the Republican and Democratic presidents and administrations, including State Department, have been very vocal against China's treatment of Uyghur as genocide, and they have been rather they've been avoiding the use of the word genocide with respect to Rohingya. They even conceal the State Department's own findings that this was the case of a textbook genocide. And so I think they're doing the same thing with India. I think it is immoral, it is short-sighted, and it is going to backfire.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. ZARNI, for your time. Truly appreciate that.
Thank you for having me on this show. Thank you, Brother Malik.
Back to you, Hena.
That was Dr. MAUNG ZARNI, Research Fellow at the Genocide Documentation Center and Advisor to Genocide Watch, with Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube and Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.